It was supposed to be a home invasion. At least, that's what the daughter told police. November 8th, 2010, Markham, Ontario. A quiet suburb where nothing violent ever seemed to happen. A 24-year-old woman calls 911. Her voice trembles. She whispers that men broke into the house. She says they tied her up. She says her parents have been shot. Upstairs, everything looks normal. Family photos, academic awards, a piano against the wall. The image of success. Downstairs, paramedics find something else. Her mother is dead. Her father barely alive. And the daughter? Unharmed. At first, detectives believe it's a robbery gone wrong. But then the details begin to unravel. No forced entry, valuables left behind, and a survivor who doesn't behave like a victim. Then the father wakes from a coma. He doesn't ask what happened. He tells police something chilling. His daughter was talking to them. Not pleading, not begging, talking like she knew them. What investigators would uncover next wasn't a burglary. It was a life built on lies. Fake grades, fake university, fake future, and a plan not made in anger, but in quiet calculation. Tonight on Unsaid Case Files, the story of a daughter who didn't run away from her life. She tried to rewrite it. Jennifer Pan was born in 1986 to immigrant parents who believed in one simple rule: sacrifice now, succeed later. Her mother and father had fled Vietnam and rebuilt their lives in Canada from nothing. Factory jobs, long hours, careful saving. Everything they did had a purpose: to give their children the opportunities they never had. By the early 2000s, they achieved it. A large home in a quiet neighborhood, stability, security, a future. And to them, success had a very specific path: good grades, university, professional career, no distractions. Jennifer's life was scheduled almost entirely by her parents. School during the day, music lessons after, figure skating practice most evenings. Friends were limited. Parties were forbidden. Dating was out of the question. To outsiders, it looked like discipline. To Jennifer, it felt like surveillance. But the pressure wasn't the real problem. The problem was she couldn't meet it. Her grades were average, far from the perfection her parents believed she had. And when university acceptance depended on her performance, she failed a critical math course. Her admission was revoked. That moment could have been a confession. Instead, it became the beginning of a double life. Jennifer told her parents she was still going to university, and from that day forward, every morning she left home pretending to attend classes she wasn't enrolled in. She spent her days in libraries, cafes, and part-time jobs. Then came home with stories, homework, and fake success. One lie became 10. 10 became hundreds. And each day the truth became harder to survive. Because the longer she pretended to be perfect, the more she believed she could never be anything else. Maintaining a lie for a day is easy. Maintaining one for years requires planning. Jennifer didn't just pretend to attend university. She built an entire world around it. She bought used textbooks, filled notebooks with copied information, invented assignments and exams. She even told her parents she had earned scholarships. Every conversation at the dinner table reinforced the illusion. Grades discussed, classes described, a future career slowly taking shape. But there was another secret life hidden inside the first. A boyfriend. Daniel Wong. He represented everything her parents had forbidden. Freedom, independence, and a life outside their expectations. So she hid him too. Late-night calls, secret meetings, carefully constructed excuses. For years, Jennifer balanced two identities: the obedient daughter at home and a normal young adult everywhere else. The illusion finally cracked when her parents grew suspicious. They followed her one day, expecting a hospital volunteer shift she claimed to work. Instead, they discovered the truth. No uniform, no job, no university. Everything collapsed in a single moment. Her father wanted her out of the house immediately. Her mother convinced him to let her stay, but under strict rules. No freedom, no boyfriend, no independence. Her phone monitored, her movements restricted. To her parents, it was discipline. To Jennifer, it felt like prison. And now, the truth was known. But the lies didn't stop. They just changed. Because she still wanted the life she had imagined. And now the only people standing in the way were the ones who had raised her. After the truth came out, Jennifer's world became smaller than ever. Her parents controlled where she went, who she spoke to, when she left the house. The double life was over, but the life she wanted still existed, just out of reach. Daniel Wong. They were told to end their relationship permanently. No calls, no visits, no contact. For a while, they tried. But distance didn't solve anything. Jennifer still imagined a future where she was independent, living on her own, making her own choices, free from expectations she could never meet. And in her mind, her parents had become more than authority figures. They had become the barrier to that future. Money also mattered. Her parents had savings, insurance, a house, stability. Things she didn't have and couldn't have while living under their control. Investigators would later believe the idea didn't appear suddenly. It formed slowly. First frustration, then resentment, then a dangerous conclusion. The situation would never change, unless something removed the obstacle. Around this time, Jennifer began reaching out to people she believed had criminal connections. At first, the conversations sounded almost hypothetical. Then they became specific. She asked about making someone disappear, not running away, not moving out, making the problem permanently stop. The plan emphasized one thing. It had to look like a robbery. No suspicion, no connection to her. Just a random act of violence in a safe neighborhood. By the time the idea became real, it no longer sounded impossible to her. It sounded like a solution. Turning anger into action takes a step most people never cross. Jennifer crossed it quietly. Through acquaintances connected to her boyfriend, she was introduced to people willing to commit crimes for money. At first, the discussions were vague. Then numbers were mentioned. thousands of dollars in exchange for a staged home invasion. The goal was simple: make it look random, no personal connection, no obvious motive. Just another burglary that turned violent. Messages were exchanged. Phones were changed to avoid tracing. Details were coordinated. Investigators would later reconstruct dozens of communications leading up to one specific date: November 8th, 2010. That night, Jennifer did something small, but critical. She unlocked the front door before going to bed. No forced entry would be needed. Later, she spoke on the phone, confirming everyone was home. Her parents had gone downstairs. The house was quiet. Soon after, 3 men entered through the unlocked door. They moved through the home as planned, demanding money, creating the appearance of a robbery. Jennifer stayed upstairs, waiting. What happened next would change every life connected to that house forever. By morning, the story she would tell police was already prepared. Masked intruders, tied hands, a survivor spared by chance. But the plan had one flaw no one expected. Someone lived. Shortly after midnight, the quiet street stayed silent. No alarms, no neighbors awake. Inside the house, the staged robbery unfolded exactly as planned. Voices downstairs, footsteps moving room to room, drawers opening. Then, stillness. Minutes later, Jennifer dialed 911. Her voice shook as she told the operator intruders had broken in and tied her up. She said her parents had been hurt. Police and paramedics rushed to the home, expecting a burglary gone wrong. They found her restrained, but conscious and able to speak. Upstairs looked normal. Downstairs did not. Her mother had died from her injuries. Her father was alive, but critically hurt. He was rushed to hospital, slipping into a coma. To investigators, the scene felt unusual, but not impossible. Violent robberies happen. At first, they treated Jennifer as a traumatized survivor. She repeated the same story: masked men, money demanded. She was spared. And for a short time, everyone believed her. But cases don't break on what's obvious. They break on what doesn't fit. And slowly, detectives began noticing details that didn't match a random crime. The door wasn't forced open. Valuables remained untouched. And the only person unharmed was the one person who should have been in the most danger. At first, Jennifer Pan was treated as a victim. Detectives spoke gently. They allowed breaks. They reassured her she was safe. But investigators are trained to notice patterns. And this scene had too many contradictions. There were no signs of forced entry. Expensive items remained in plain sight. And despite multiple people moving through the home, nothing connected the attackers to any known robbery crew. Then came the biggest inconsistency. Jennifer described being tied tightly to a banister, yet she had managed to reach a phone and call for help. Possible, but unlikely. Still, police needed more than doubt. They needed evidence. Days later, her father woke up in the hospital. He had survived injuries that should have taken his life, but his memory remained. Detectives asked what he remembered about the attackers. He didn't describe their faces. He didn't describe weapons. He described his daughter. He told investigators he saw Jennifer speaking to one of the intruders, not pleading, not screaming, speaking calmly, like they knew each other. In that moment, the case changed direction. The only eyewitness inside the house had just placed the victim and the suspects together before the crime ended. Now detectives weren't just investigating a home invasion. They were investigating the possibility that the call for help came from the person who arranged it. Detectives brought Jennifer back in for another interview, then another. Each time they asked the same questions in different ways, and each time small details changed. The timeline shifted, descriptions varied, memories became uncertain. To investigators, this wasn't trauma. It was pressure cracking a story. By the third interview, they changed tactics. Instead of confronting her with accusations, they spoke calmly, confidently, as if they already knew the truth. They told her evidence placed her in contact with the attackers. They suggested technology had tracked movements inside the house. Some of it was real, some of it wasn't, but legally they were allowed to use psychological strategy. Hours passed. Jennifer grew quiet. Then she asked a question. What happens if someone planned something, but didn't mean for it to go that far? The story began to unravel. She admitted she had arranged the break-in, but she claimed the plan was different. She said she intended to be the one who died, not her parents. Investigators didn't believe it. Phone records, messages, and coordination showed planning focused on the household, not self-harm. Soon after, she was arrested, not as a witness, not as a survivor, but as the person who set the entire crime in motion. And police now had a new task: finding the people she hired to carry it out. Once Jennifer was arrested, the investigation widened. Phone records became a roadmap. Dozens of messages in the hours before the attack. Burner phones. SIM cards swapped to avoid detection. The digital trail told a clear story: coordination. Police traced connections from Jennifer to Daniel Wong, from Wong to other associates. One by one, arrests followed. Lenford Crawford, David Milvaganam, Eric Carty. Some were accused of planning, others of entering the house. The alleged payment, thousands of dollars per target. Investigators believed the motive was financial freedom. If both parents died, inheritance money and life insurance could total hundreds of thousands of dollars. Enough to start over. Enough to build the life she imagined. But the plan had miscalculated one thing. Her father survived. And survival meant testimony. As charges were laid, first-degree murder and attempted murder, the case shocked Canada. Not because violence was unheard of, but because of who was accused. A 24-year-old daughter from a stable suburban home. no history of violence, no criminal record. Yet prosecutors argued this wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate, carefully discussed, carefully timed, carefully staged. And now, all of them would face trial together. The story of a random robbery had completely collapsed. What remained was something far more disturbing. A family tragedy planned from inside the home itself. The trial began in 2014 and lasted months. Prosecutors didn't rely on a single confession. They built a timeline. Messages sent hours before the attack, phone locations placing everyone in position, and the unlocked front door, proof the intruders were expected. But the most powerful testimony came from inside the family. Jennifer's father took the stand. Still living with permanent injuries, he told the court what he remembered that night, seeing his daughter interacting calmly with one of the men inside the house. It contradicted everything she had told police. Her defense argued something different. They suggested she never intended for her parents to be killed, that events spiraled beyond what she imagined. But the evidence showed preparation, coordination, and payment. This wasn't a moment. It was a plan. After deliberation, the jury returned its decision. Guilty. Jennifer Pan, along with her co-conspirators, was convicted of murder and attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. For the court, the motive didn't need to be rage or hatred. Control and the removal of an obstacle was enough. But even after the verdict, the case didn't fully end. Years later, appeals would question legal instructions given to the jury, keeping parts of the case alive in the courts. Yet one fact never changed. The attack had been arranged from inside the home. After the trial, the house in Markham became quiet again. But nothing about the story faded. Jennifer Pan was sent to prison to serve a life sentence. Her father, the only surviving witness, chose to cut off all contact with her permanently. For him, the loss wasn't just physical. It was the realization that the person he had spent his life protecting had planned his death. Years later, appeals challenged parts of the conviction, arguing the jury hadn't been allowed to consider lesser charges. Courts agreed to review the murder conviction. But the attempted murder conviction remained, meaning she would still spend decades behind bars. Legally, the case continued. Emotionally, it was already settled. To investigators and psychologists, the case became a study, not of sudden violence, but quiet escalation. No explosive arguments, no long history of abuse claims, no public warning signs. Instead, a life constructed around expectation and a fear of failure so strong it demanded an impossible solution. Rather than confess the truth, she tried to erase it. The tragedy wasn't born in a single night. It was built over years of pressure, deception, and the belief that consequences could be avoided if reality itself was removed. In the end, the perfect daughter never existed. Only the story she believed she had to maintain. And the cost of protecting that story became irreversible. Some crimes happen in anger. Others happen in silence. The Jennifer Pan case reminds us that not every tragedy begins with violence. Sometimes it begins with a lie that grows too big to survive the truth. If you enjoyed this episode of Unsaid Case Files, make sure to follow so you never miss a case. And if you want to help the show grow, like, share, and send this episode to someone who loves true crime as much as you do. I'm Johnny Black, and I'll see you in the next file.